Good evening and welcome into Tennessee Volunteers live here on the Voice of College Football Network. Tucker Harlan and Jordan Binkley with you on this lovely Monday evening. So glad that you guys could join us. If you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe to Tennessee at the Voice of College Football on YouTube. Really helps us out, helps you get closer to all the great content that you enjoy. As you can see, Jordan and I are not alone. We are joined by a very special guest tonight, and I think this is the first time ever that I've been surrounded by MTSU grads on my show.
True blue.
Yeah, but that's what we got tonight. This guy, he's I think just one stop at the commercial appeal away from having covered every FBS team in Tennessee, which would be a remarkable feat, although we do love him in Knoxville. Please welcome Adam Sparks of the Knox News Sentinel. Adam, how you doing?
Really good. Yeah, I'm not going to Memphis.
Please don't.
I grew up in West Tennessee and then lived in Middle Tennessee and now in East Tennessee. So I go east, which means if I had another beat, it would be like in the Carolinas. I think that means I continue to go east like every 20 years. So I think I retire in Hilton Head. I think that's how that geography works.
Yeah, there are the Outer Banks or Kiowa, one of those fun places where you can play on a golf course. That would be ideal. All right, so let's get straight to it. We are well into fall camp season now, and we've gotten to the point where fans are complaining on Twitter about what some player in a red jersey or who some player in a red jersey is, who it may or may not be. It was confirmed to be Miles Kitselman. We've reached that point where the fans are just really, really worried about their quarterback situation, but there are some pretty major elephants in the room that we need to address, Adam. And one that you actually reported on, I believe, yesterday with the wide receiver room, which is the fact that you've got two guys down right now in Chris Brazzell and Mike Matthews. And this is not a very deep wide receiver room. And anytime you have an injury scare with a group like that, it's immediately a concern. So, Adam, how concerned should Tennessee fans be about the state of the wide receiver room? And is it something that you think trickles into the regular season?
Well, I mean, that's the whole reason it matters, I think, is that the possibility that it could trickle into the regular season. I mean, here's the thing. I don't think it should be I don't think Tennessee fans should see it as the sky is falling. Chris Brazzell's injury is day-to-day. He'll probably be back to full-fledged participant this week. Mike Matthews is day-to-day. He'll probably be the same, back sometime this week. And so you can say, hey, it's not that big of an issue because two guys had minor injuries. That being said, if this was a regular season game week, if they had played on Sunday, Chris Brazzell would be out or at best limited. Mike Matthews would have been out or at best limited. And, I went out there and saw the practice on Sunday morning, and the starting receivers were Braylon Staley, freshman Travis Smith, and walk-on Trey Weary. And that's a problem if that's your starting wide receivers. No shade against those guys, but that's a problem. So you can see how depth issues could creep up really quickly. And so it's just, it's something to watch. That's what it's not, the sky is not falling, but you can just see how fragile that unit is, that it just cannot take injuries. We've seen now, just Josh Heupel's fifth season, we can kind of determine that they need 4, probably 5 receivers. They run 3 receivers. They've gotten the last couple of years into using a fourth, to rotating a fourth guy in, and then you're going to have an injury somewhere in there, so you need a fifth. Well, to have at least freshmen pan out, and maybe Amari Jefferson, maybe somebody else. It's just the numbers aren't there.
Yeah, you absolutely can't afford to have any more losses in this receiving core. And it's kind of funny you didn't even mention Radarius Jackson being in that mix. Yeah. You mentioned a walk-on and Trey Weary, which is. It's not something you want necessarily, although you did find a nice walk-on last year at safety, Will Brooks. Sometimes those guys are able to work some wonders. But that is an issue that has arisen here recently. Like within the last 48 hours, people have been discussing it. But there's a couple more that come to mind that have been developing over the last few months. And one of them is this Boo Carter situation that we've been monitoring for a while. And I watched Josh Heupel's press conference on Media Day, and it basically just sounded like he's got a few things that he needs to do in order to get back into the fold. From your perspective, what steps has he taken to get back in a rhythm with this team?
Yeah, I mean, he's got to go through his conditioning, right? You know, you're in trouble, you got to run. He's done those sort of things behind closed doors. He's got to work his way physically into those sort of things. He went to the East Tennessee Children's Hospital, I think 3 straight days. That was, you hate to say it's punishment because it's like a charity thing, but I think that was done to give him a little bit of perspective. You know, hey, buddy, you got a platform, you make a lot of money in NIL doing this. Like, just think about like how fortunate you are to be playing college football. That sort of message, I think, is what Josh Heupel wanted Boo to get. I don't know how long this is going to go. I mean, when we go to practice and see him, he does stretch, and then once they get into drills, positional drills, he goes off on his own with a GA or trainer or whatever, and does his own conditioning. If you didn't know any better, you would think he was an injured player because he's sort of over there in the corner with the injured players. After a few minutes, the team goes outside. Boo Carter does not go with them. So some of it is he's taking punishment like you would normally think a guy would take punishment. But part of it is also he's excluded. It's almost like the exclusion from the team is part of the punishment. It's sort of the embarrassment of it. You know, it's sort of hey, all the cool kids are at this table and you got to sit in the corner by yourself. That's sort of the feel of it. I mean, I don't know Boo Carter personally. I've only interviewed him a handful of times about football, but, you know, I think that was part of it. Did I lose you guys?
Very briefly.
Yeah,
it's all good. We were talking a little bit about what was going on with Boo Carter, and of course, you know, you mentioned the fact that he's like not allowed to hang out with the cool kids right now. He's got to work off to himself, and we've heard a lot about, or not a lot, but just a little bit about, you know, different punishments these universities can levy with like NIL and other things. Is that going on at all? Do you even know anything about potential fines or whatever in the NIL compensation he's receiving?
No, I don't. Now the rev share, he would have signed the revenue sharing contract to the school most likely back in the summer before he had any absences, because I think his absences were late in the summer. Yeah. Most of those contracts were done early July, but that's interesting if the timing would have affected that. In terms of NIL, I don't know. And all those contracts are written up differently. NIL collectives have gotten creative the past couple of years about being able to squeeze more incentives into those contracts, but I don't know Boo's specific contracts. So, I mean, I think it comes down to this. If Boo Carter does all the things that Josh Heupel lays out for him, he'll have a chance to be back in the lineup, eventually back in the starting lineup, and make an impact on the team. If he doesn't, he won't. And so I think the ball is in Boo's court, that's for sure. I think he's figured out they can play without him, but they are much better if he's on the field.
Yeah, so that's 2 pretty major elephants we've just addressed. We need to move on to elephant number 3 now, which is the quarterback situation, which,
yes,
of course, that has been talked about ad nauseum just since the spring game, really. And there were some things floating around today, I think maybe about an interview with Mike Keith saying they're going to use a little bit more 12 personnel to help out the quarterbacks, whoever that may be, in order to just make his life a little bit easier against those odd fronts, because that's kind of the counter to what the counter was to the Heupel offense in the first place, why it was able to be slowed down in 2023. What is the very latest on the quarterback situation at Tennessee?
Yeah, I could see why they would use 2 tight ends for any other reason than the receivers, that's a thin position. It's just early camp, but I've seen a lot of drops by receivers, none by the tight ends. Tight ends look great. Kitzelman looks great. Ethan Davis looks great. The freshmen look good. So they're talented and heavy and experienced at tight end. I like what they have at tight end. There's more question marks, I think, at certainly at wide receiver. So I could see why they would go that route. Quarterback's interesting because it's technically a 3-man race, but with all due respect to George McIntyre, I think it's probably a 2-man race. I think he's gonna be a good player who's a really good recruit. They like where he's at. I think they think he's ahead of schedule. But I think the best thing for George McIntyre, the best thing for the team is if he develops as a freshman is supposed to, and then he has a chance to compete for the starting job next season, either with Merklinger or Faison Brandon or whoever. But I think it's probably a 2-man race. I think it'd be hard to get McIntyre ready that quickly to start against Syracuse or whatever. Ask somebody around the program a few days ago. I said, who starts if Tennessee plays tomorrow? Who's the starting quarterback? And this person said Jake Merklinger. And I said, who's the starting quarterback if they play in 2 weeks? And he said, that's a little harder. And I think that's sort of where we're at. Jake Merklinger, you can see his familiarity with the offense, with the drills, with the practice, with the personnel and all those things. You can see that as a plus. But the longer that this thing goes and the deeper we get into camp, like the more opportunity that Aguilar could close that gap. And so it's really just about if he can close the gap or not. I think it would surprise me if Merklinger won the job, but it wouldn't shock me. I still think Aguilar's the guy, though. I mean, that's why they got him, because they needed a guy with experience, and he at least has that. And you would think he would have some upside because he's still learning the offense, learning the personnel, learning everything about the offense. And once he gets it, he should get better and better. Merklinger is not a finished product, but you would think what you have right now is probably what you're going to get from Merklinger, at least between now and the opener.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that about Jake Merklinger. We had Ryan Shumpert on about a month ago talking about the quarterback race between the three of them. And I'm with you on George McIntyre. I think that's probably the best thing for him to just be in a bit of a developmental role this year before taking on those starting reps. But, Shump was telling us Merklinger is probably the best fit for that offense just because, Heupel his system is designed around quarterbacks taking care of the ball through the air. And Merklinger is not a guy that historically, at least just back to his high school days, I should say, has turned the ball over much. I think he threw maybe 2 interceptions his final year of high school. So that's an interesting point you bring up there, just with the quarterback race. Jordan, did you have something?
Yeah, I was going to ask how Aguilar's development has been so far, because I've heard that he's been spending extra hours trying to learn the playbook and everything like that. And as you mentioned, some people have said that Merklinger looks like he could be the starter as of right now. I'm just wondering how Aguilar has adapted to this new playbook and how he's essentially just looked at practice.
Lost you guys for a second, but I heard Merklinger.
Oh, I was just saying, how has Joey Aguilar been since he's been adjusting to the new playbook and everything? And does he look like he's acting that he's made enough development to get some playing time and be ready to go by the start of the season?
He looks more comfortable each day. I mean, some of the offense is going to be turned toward whichever quarterback is in the lead, I think. Offense can be adjusted based on who the quarterback is. I think Aguilar and Merklinger, their skill sets are close enough that you could kind of go with either one, especially if this competition goes close to the season. Not worried about who the starter is once they name. But yeah, Aguilar looks comfortable. Aguilar can run, he can throw. Merklinger can run and throw. I'm not worried about whoever they choose. The interceptions, like Tucker said, I'm a little concerned about that because Aguilar threw a ton of picks last year. No quarterback in this offense has ever thrown a lot of interceptions. Aguilar threw 14 picks last year. Hendon Hooker, Joe Milton, Nico threw 15 picks combined in the last 4 years. Think about the difference in that. Now, there's different offense, but Aguilar cannot turn the ball over. If he does, Merklinger will be out there.
All right, so those are the three major elephants it feels like we've had to address with fall camp. Adam, any other major storylines that you're really monitoring right now?
I'm curious. I'm curious of the offensive line. I know we hadn't talked about defense, but I'm curious about the offensive line if they can put the right pieces together. Wendell Moy, I feel good about. Lance Hurd, I think, is going to be pretty good this year, but I want to know if all the pieces are going to come together. If Sanders is really ready, who's going to be the center? I think it's a coin flip between Satterwhite and Sam Pendleton. Jesse Perry is going to be in there somewhere. Right guard, probably, but Pendleton can slide there. There's a few combinations there. I just think that's important. They have to get that figured out because they're thin at receiver. They lost it. They have to replace Dylan Sampson. That offensive line with a new quarterback behind them has to be good, and so that has to gel. And so I'm curious to see if they can find the right combination there.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point with the offense too. I know we haven't talked much about the defense, like you said, but there's just so much that we don't know about this offense. We don't know what it's going to look like. And, going back to Lance Hurd, that's one where it's like you have to really prove that the injury was what was holding him back last season because, was he getting improper criticism from fans because of that injury? That's an answer to a question that we'll find out later on this season. But now that you mention it, because we really haven't talked much about it at all, other than the Boot Carter situation, what are your initial thoughts on this defense going into camp?
Pass rush will be good. D-line rotation still going to be there. I think they're going to be good up front. Arion Carter, if he can stay healthy, I think is an all-conference caliber player. Jeremiah Thielander is going to be solid and very dependable. Secondary, I think, is probably going to be better than what people think, despite Jermod McCoy being out. I like Colton Hood that they picked up in the transfer portal out of Colorado. It's a funny thing that we say that about Josh Heupel team is that I'm pretty good and very good. And the fact that Josh Heupel's offense is a bigger question mark than the defense, I think, says a lot.
Yeah, it really does say a lot about a team about a coach that has not historically had great defenses. It's just been this weird narrative flip in the last few years. It's not something that any of us were expecting. Another note on camp that I had, because I remember this from when I was there. You don't really get to hear from the veterans early on in fall camp. You usually get to hear from the young guys. So which of the young guys has impressed you the most, Adam?
The D lineman, I like Ethan Utley. Some of those defensive linemen I think are probably going to get a shot in the rotation. Travis Smith, the wide receiver, he looks the part. I mean, every year there's one of those freshmen that looks like he's older than he is. And Travis Smith looks like long, lean wide receiver, high 4-star, and there's opportunity there. And so it's one of those freshmen are going to play, maybe multiple freshmen. And Travis Smith would be the early pick. He's wearing number 1, Dante Thornton's number. He kind of looks like Dante Thornton, just his body type. And he seems pretty confident. He comes from a high school that's well-developed, very professional. And so I'm curious to see if he can be an instant impact guy. He kind of has to be. Somebody has to be in that receiving core because, as we mentioned before, they're not going to go all season just with the three guys that are coming back.
Well, Adam, you mentioned Miles Kitzelman earlier. I've been wondering, how has he been looking since he's been trying to recover from injury, and the same with Jermod McCoy as well.
Jermod McCoy is still going to be out quite a while. Don't have a timetable on him. It'll be a number of games. We'll see on him. Miles Kitzelman looks great. He's one of those typical injured guys that really, really, really wants to take the red jersey off and play and have contact, he'll be fine. They're going to keep him in a red jersey until the first game, just as a precautionary thing. But he's the alpha on the offense, maybe the alpha on the whole team. He's taken that role, and run with it. And he's got a great relationship with Joey Aguilar, which could be a factor as this quarterback competition goes on.
All right, Adam, I have a few questions for you that, believe it or not, do not relate to camp. So, like I mentioned, you have covered, with the exception of Memphis, almost every FBS team in this state. There is an attitude from the boys on West End that we have not seen in quite some time. And I feel like you, of everybody on the Tennessee beat, is the most qualified to discuss this. What has it been like for you to watch this program that you used to know from afar kind of get this new chip on their shoulder, and how has it impacted them and like made them better as a football program, do you feel like?
Well, I mean, Diego Pavia would have never been a guy that played at Vanderbilt in the past. For one, they wouldn't have a transfer from, was it New Mexico State, I think. They wouldn't have got a transfer in that way. They wouldn't have had a guy with that kind of swagger. They actually would have leaned away from that type of guy, maybe a little bit during the James Franklin years, but he's just not a typical Vandy guy. And so some planets had to align for him to get there. And that's sort of what they needed. I mean, Vandy, when they do win, even to a small degree, it's probably going to be fleeting. It's probably going to be brief because everything has to line up. And that's what had to line up this time. I mean, Derek Mason had a couple of competitive years, and that was because he built a really good defense. James Franklin had a couple of really good years, and that's because he recruited well. But again, it's sort of a flash in the pan, and the flash right now is Diego Pavia. We'll see if it goes beyond that, but that they've got a new state, or they've got their stadium fixed up and all that, which was overdue by decades. So they're moving in the right direction, but they're still in the SEC, so it's a pretty tall mountain to climb.
Yeah, and looking at what they did last year, obviously the Bama win was impressive because I think I was 18 years away from being born when that last happened. I mean, you weren't very old when it happened either, Adam. Like it.
What? No, yeah. I certainly don't.
Right?
Yeah, I certainly don't recall watching that game. That's for sure.
Yeah, so it's been a minute since they did that, but I mean, you look at Vandy historically when they have those better seasons. It's just because you got some of these other programs like a Tennessee or a Georgia or a Florida is down, so that's where they're getting these wins. And you had that with Auburn at least. Kentucky can be down some years, as we know. Last year certainly being no exception, but I just thought it was good to ask you something like that because you've been around that program in the past, and you know what it's all about over there. A couple more things that involve the state of Georgia from me, one of which may or may not involve a certain aspiring politician who was once a Tennessee football coach. I know you've been covering this story a little bit. We certainly don't endorse political candidates on this show. And I saw earlier today, I was looking, whatever group funds his opposition in the Republican primary, they posted the disaster from Baton Rouge in 2010 with 13 men on the field as a little political jab at him. What are your thoughts on Derek Dooley aspiring to be a politician and potentially going for a seat in Georgia?
I think it'd be weirder if Derek Dooley, the politician, was aspiring to be a football coach. Like that would be more of a surprise. I mean, I didn't cover Dooley, but I talked to him a handful of times. Derek Dooley always seemed to be more of a politician, an administrator type than he did football coach. I mean, he's very meticulous with administrative things around the team. I know I've heard that from other guys that covered him. He talks like a politician, carries himself like a politician. Guy loves history. He's a lawyer. He's a politician. He's not a football coach. He's more of a politician than that. I actually think he'll fit in well. And I saw this video of him launching his campaign. Looked like a Southern politician to me. Again, you would convince me more of that than convincing me that he was a football coach.
Well,
Yeah.
it's funny. It's funny that you mentioned that he seems more like a politician than a football coach, considering that seemed to be his biggest bright spot when he was at Tennessee was like all his press conferences and everything like that. The way that he carried himself during then, more so than his abilities coaching football.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good talker. He's in some ways, I mean, the fact that he would think of, I mean, I know one of the more iconic one is right, Normandy and Rommel, and yeah, you got to talk. I mean, the fact that he was talking about football and was thinking of World War II tells me that this is a guy who is not thinking about football all the time. I mean, when I was with Jeremy Pruitt covering the NCAA hearings, was it a couple of years ago, and where he was in the hot seat, he was in trouble at the NCAA hearings, and there were a lot of attorneys around. Everybody's an attorney at that thing, right? And everybody's in suits and all that, and they look like $1 million right there from all these different law firms, and they're talking about all different things between the sessions of the hearing. And all Jeremy Pruitt could talk about with anybody was this play in high school and this state championship this time, and this thing that Saban came up with, and it was all football. And all the dead moments of that, every conversation you would overhear him strike up was about football, and that's what a lot of football coaches are about. Like, let's talk about football and football and football. And Derek Dooley, I think, was the opposite of that, which is why he fits in that world probably even more so than he does football. If he wasn't Vince Dooley's son, I wonder if he would have been a football coach, or if he would have just been just a lawyer, just an attorney, which he was, and just would have been in politics a long time ago.
Yeah, and I know we trash him every now and again for his football coaching career, and even some people are trashing the idea that he's trying to get into a political career. But correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think Tommy Tuberville has a law degree like Derek Dooley does. Like people forget he has a law degree and went to Virginia, which is a very prestigious institution. So maybe there's something to this.
I think Derek Dooley will probably be better equipped to make his political arguments than Tommy Tuberville. Just from an intellectual standpoint, I think Derek Dooley will do a better job doing that.
Yeah. And we mentioned in the past just how some of these Tennessee football coaches would stack up as politicians. We know who would have the best campaign ads. We all know who that is.
Yeah.
Well, Butch?
Old Butch Jones, of course.
Yeah.
When can he start being your politician?
Yeah, he was always good at things that were scripted. He needed them scripted. Yeah. He needed little sayings. He was worse once you kind of got him off the cuff.
Yeah, you don't want to get him into conversations about landing on helmets. That's dangerous territory for him. One more question I have for you that relates to the state of Georgia, Adam. I shouted you guys out at the Sentinel when this story broke because you guys really did the best job out of anybody covering it. Do you have any more Grant Furking updates for us?
Oh God.
Oh.
Well, there are updates coming in. That hasn't stopped. No, I mean, there's a warrant out for his arrest. But like, there's no extradition of like the charges he's up against. There's nobody's going to go into Kentucky or Texas or Tennessee or whatever and drag him back to Georgia. So, unless, I would say he's probably on the loose unless he gets a speeding ticket in the state of Georgia. And until then, maybe nothing, because we thought he was going to turn himself in. He did not. Kept up with him a little bit indirectly, and maybe he's been back in Georgia, but every contact that I've heard is he's been in Arkansas, Tennessee, Florida recently. He's been in a lot of other states, so I don't think he's coming home a whole lot. But when he does, he don't get caught with like your tail light out or something like that, because you could end up in jail. But he's still He's still doing some of the things that he was doing, is my understanding.
Really?
Yeah,
So he's not turned away from any of this at all. He's just continuing to do it despite having all these warrants out for him.
I heard that he made amends and paid back some debts, but then there are other debts that I think he's got or built up. And we're still looking into some other layers of the story that we haven't reported. He's popped up on social media some lately. I think he's trying to rehab his image, but that's going to take a lot. And it's more than anything. I mean, he's got to figure out how to pay back a whole lot of money from charges in Georgia.
Yeah. That thing is just crazy to me that he's continuing to do it. And I was just thinking, like you mentioned the social media, because I've seen some screenshots where he's brave enough to be retweeting things, and that's a little surprising to me that you're willing to show face on a large social network where anybody, including your former employer, could locate you.
Yeah, trying to rehab his image. I don't know. I know some of what he's trying to do to make money still, but you Google his name, and if he's interviewing for a job, you Google his name, it doesn't show up a lot of good things right now. So, so I think he's trying to keep somewhat of a low profile, but you still see him on social media. But he's still making the rounds, and people within the fan base, alums, former teammates, still have some contact with him.
All right, Jordan, do you have anything else for Adam?
Yeah, I guess just what are your overall thoughts of Tennessee fall camp? I know we touched up a lot of it on earlier, but like what's your overall thoughts on the team and like how they've been looking?
If the quarterback question turns out well, this could be a 9-3 type season. If quarterback is not figured out and receivers, if those depth issues creep up, you could have a 7-5 type season. And I think this is I think probably a 9-win defense. It could be a 6, 7, 8, or 9-win offense. And that's, I think, where it's going to come down to how good the offense is. They've done, my understanding, even when the media has not been in practice, the closed portions, my understanding is that they have done fewer team activities so far in camp than they have in the past. And that's because they want to get a lot of the fundamentals down before they go 11-11. They've done some of that, but less of it than they've done in the past. And that sort of tells you the inexperience and the youth and the newness, especially with at least one of the quarterbacks that you have. So everything's a little behind, but predictably behind because of how young they are. They just have to be ready for Syracuse. That's a game you don't have to play great, but you have to play reasonably well to win that game. Get through that, and then the schedule sets up to where you can be pretty good and win 9 games because it's a somewhat weak schedule outside of maybe 3 or 4 opponents. But I think that schedule will benefit them if they can just sort of get the offense in a reasonably decent place. But I don't know if they'll do that or not. Josh Heupel always puts together at least a good defense, a good offense. And so you have to have faith that he's going to figure out a way to do that. But he's got to figure out quarterback first.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on the record predictions because I think there could be a game that sneaks in there like, say, Mizzou in 2023 that's not a part of that big 3, so to speak, that could potentially sneak up on Tennessee. But I'm having a hard time figuring out where that game is going to be.
Yeah, at Mississippi State, that seems a little. I mean, that's a road game, but that's
early. There's a couple things going on there too, because Mississippi State is a team that's coming off a brutal season. They're at Southern Miss to start the season, who just hired that Marshall coach who won the Sun Belt.
And brought his whole team with him.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's going to be a tough opener. And you got Arizona State at home, which I know Cam Scadaboo's gone, but they still got the receiver Jordan Tyson, and Sam Levitt, the quarterback, is still there too. I know Tennessee fans were at least rumoring that Tennessee could be luring him away in replacement of Nico. But I personally don't feel like it's that game. Is there another one potentially other than Oklahoma?
Yeah, maybe the obvious game. What road game is Tennessee going to struggle in like they did Mizzou 2 years ago, at Arkansas last year? Like, there's a road game that Tennessee is going to drop the ball on this year. We keep on thinking, which one is it going to be? Maybe it's just at Florida. Like, maybe, on a neutral field, they're better than Florida, but instead they play terrible at Florida, which would not shock any of us going to the Swamp. And so, maybe that's the one. And if that's the case, lose to Georgia, lose to Alabama, lose to Florida, you're 9-3. But who knows? At Mississippi State, they have cowbells, and it'll be loud, and it'll be a weird atmosphere. Oklahoma comes to Neyland. Josh Heupel beats everybody at Neyland except for Georgia, but Oklahoma will have a good quarterback, so we'll see. It just, so much of it comes down to whether or not they can just get quarterback right in the offense, wide receivers in a good place. And if they can, then they could be a team that's in the playoff hunt in November. If not, then they're a team that's, playing in the Music City Bowl.
All right, Adam. Well, that's, I believe, all we got for you. Tell us what you guys have got rolling out at Knox News Sentinel here in the next few weeks, just as camp is going on.
Yeah, just a whole bunch of camp coverage, some deeper dives into the quarterback competition, and we'll have a couple of newsy stories coming up, I think, the next couple of weeks. I always like to get those out of the way before the season kicks off. We'll see if those develop. Still watching the Grant Firking thing, but can't promise if and when we're going to have something else on that.
Fantastic. Well, everybody, he is Adam Sparks of the Knox News Sentinel. You can follow him at Adam Sparks on Twitter. He and I both like to keep it simple with our Twitter @. No underscores, no numbers, none of that other stuff. We just put our names on there and we just leave it at that. Adam, it was great to see you again, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, guys. Sorry about the technical issues. If that was mine, I'm not sure. Okay. You guys have a good one.
You too,
yeah,
Adam.
Nice meeting you. Thank you.
Yep.
Adam Sparks, everyone, on with us tonight, talking a little fall camp and some other things in there too, as we mentioned there, over the course of our discussion with Vandy. And of course, I had to get his opinion on the Grant Firking thing just because he was the one that was in the lead with that story along with everybody else at the Sentinel. But really great guy. We hope to have him on the show again here in the near future. We have other matters to address tonight, as you can probably see, and one of which is recruiting. Again, we're getting closer to the end of the big recruiting season, I would say, but we are still in a place where Tennessee is in the hunt for some of these guys. And you saw a commitment this week that was honestly a little surprising because Tennessee was in the mix for this guy, but it looked like he was going to go to Utah. His dad played at Utah, so he was a legacy. And he commits to Tennessee. He's a borderline 5-star. Salisi Moa is his name. I should have probably mentioned that earlier, but plays both wide receiver and defensive back out there at, I believe, Fremont High School in Utah. Jordan, your initial thoughts on Salisi Moa?
Well, like you said, I mean, I wasn't expecting another big recruit to come Tennessee's way, especially so quickly. But, I'm pretty impressed with everything I've seen. I mean, it seems like he's probably going to be playing receiver, I would imagine. I mean, maybe he does go out there and play safety, but I mean, he's put up some pretty good stats offensively. Last season, he had 800 yards, 10 touchdowns. He's also got a little bit of experience in punt and kick return. And I think, he got 2 interceptions last season too. And I saw both of them were pick sixes, which, I mean, of course you'd love to see. I mean, I'm sure he could play defense at Tennessee. He might end up doing so. I wonder if he could get to see both sides possibly like we expect from Boo Carter this season. But I like what I see on him for sure. And I mean, like his family, I mean, he's got athleticism just seeping all through his family. Like you mentioned with his dad playing at Utah, his dad also played for the Dolphins for 2 seasons, and he's currently got 2 brothers now that are playing college football as well. I think one of them's a linebacker at Michigan State, and the other one I think's at BYU. And then something else interesting I discovered about him too, that his dad's actually got a 5-2 record in MMA. So,
Really?
yeah.
Did not know his dad
And
was a fighter.
Yeah, apparently he's still doing bare knuckle boxing too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you learn something new every day with these guys. So I got to watch his film right after he committed, and we had this conversation about Joel Wyatt last week, right? Where is he going to play for Tennessee? It's a little more obvious with this one just because it's 2 positions and not 4, like you saw with Joel Wyatt. But I think, unlike Joel Wyatt, it is going to be on offense. I think he's got much more natural ability as a wide receiver. And I don't say this as a slight at him, but I think he makes everything look so easy to the point where you don't feel like you're watching a borderline 5-star or 5-star kid playing out there. So, he doesn't, it's not a ton of separation that you see between him and defensive backs, but he's able to go up and high point the football as you would expect for a 6'2" wide receiver. But what really impressed me was his elusiveness at that height. Not all of those guys were able to move outside of a straight line. That is the taller ones, at least. You expect that from a smaller slot guy, but maybe not one that's one of those big bruising wide receivers that's just meant to go up there and get the 50-50 balls. But that's what I saw out of Salisi Moe, and I was pretty impressed by it. And I think this is going to be a quality ad for Tennessee.
Yeah, and I think there was like one highlight I saw where he like hit a juke, then immediately hit another one right after, like pretty effectively. I mean, and
there were 1 or 2 of those in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty nice seeing a receiver not only be able to catch the ball effectively, but be able to, make moves with his legs as well. And I mean, he definitely is a player I'm excited to see more from. And like, I guess technically if you're counting the composite ranking, which had him as the number 2 athlete, and had him as a 5-star. I mean, if you count that, then Tennessee currently has 3 5-stars on the team with potential to get 2 more as well. So, it's exciting time for Tennessee's recruiting.
Well, it is an exciting time, unless you are concerned about the tight end position, in which case it may not be as exciting. We've been talking about this basically since we started hosting this show, but it finally came true this week, I believe, on either Thursday or Friday. Carson Snead finally flipped to North Carolina. He finally joined his brother Dayton with Bill Belichick. This one does hurt a little bit just because he was an in-state commitment from Donaldson Christian over here in the Nashville area. And I think this is going to have you searching for another tight end in the class. Tight ends are kind of strange because it's like it's kind of like quarterback. You've only got one of them on the field for the most part, unless, like we were talking about with Adam, you're going to use them in the 12 personnel. But I don't think this is one you lose nearly as much sleep over, just because you've known it was going to happen for a while. Like, he was shopping around at other places all summer. I think he was supposed to visit Colorado at one point, but didn't. I know Florida and Ole Miss were 2 places he visited for a fact. But overall, not a shock that Carson Snead has left the 2026 class.
Yeah, as you mentioned, like, this is something that we've been monitoring for a while. And it's honestly it's not surprising that he left to go to North Carolina, especially considering that his brother's there. And I guess he'll be getting to play with Bill Belichick and the boys now. But I think Tennessee's like pretty good at tight end right now. Of course, they're going to need to add more recruits, but I'm excited about Kitzelman this season. And I think Ethan Davis can do well too. So, not like a huge loss, but Tennessee definitely will need to target someone else and with his absence. But it's unfortunate seeing a guy decommit and go to another school, but best of luck to him and his brother and everything. But yeah, Yeah, not much more really to say about the Snead situation.
So I'm just trying to get a nice look here at the tight end position for Tennessee here in the future. Obviously, we know about the two this year with Ethan Davis, Miles Kitzelman. There's a few other names to look at as well. Desan Brame was a big time commit in the 2025 class. He flipped from Oregon and I don't know if you would call it a trade in decommitments with Doug Utu, who was committed to Tennessee for a little bit and then flipped over there. But they got Desan Brame out of Kansas, number 4 prospect in that class. Still have Cole Harrison around, the surprise flip, I think, on signing day from 2024, if I'm not mistaken. And then Jack Van Dorselaer, who is another guy that they are very high on over there. In fact, he had a couple touchdowns in the orange and white games. So not a position Tennessee is necessarily hurting in right now, but you would like to see some more commitments here soon at tight end. As a matter of fact, Tennessee actually offered a tight end that's committed to Kentucky, I believe this weekend, in Lincoln Watkins, 3-star guy from, I think it's what they call the thumb region in Michigan because it's shaped like a glove, up in Port Huron, which is like right on the Canadian border. Would be a big get for Tennessee, just knowing now that they don't have a guy at that position for the future.
Yeah, and what's like what is there to say about him? Because I'm not really as familiar with him as much. Does he have like decent size? Like, have you watched any of his film or anything?
To be completely transparent with film, I don't really watch it unless these guys commit.
Yeah, me too.
And as for the size, I don't really know a whole lot about that either. I know I wrote it down somewhere, but I've since forgotten about it. But Tennessee's tried to lure guys away from Kentucky at tight end in the past too. What was the kid's name? Willie Rodriguez, who Tennessee tried to lure away from there a few years back. So, we'll see what Tennessee does to address that situation, if they do anything to address it. But again, that tight end is a position that they no longer have a commitment in, and running back as well is a position they don't yet have a commitment in that class. That could change here 2 weeks from today with Savion Hyder. Outside of that, Darius Gray commits just a few days after Hyder, and I think the mods are pointing to other schools as opposed to Tennessee for Darius Gray. So not as optimistic about that one as Savion Hyder right now, which is kind of a 50-50 race between Tennessee and Michigan. And then other than that, I don't really have any other big name recruits on the horizon. Jace Johnson committed to Texas A&M over the weekend, and Darius McKinley, who was a 3-star kid that Tennessee made his top 4, I believe. But he was from Louisiana, and his brother was playing at LSU, so kind of felt like an obvious decision there. So other than Hyder and Gray, no other really big recruits on the horizon at the moment.
Yeah, it would be nice if Tennessee can get one of those two guys. Like, as you said, I mean, there's a couple other teams that are in the mix for Gray. I think Ohio State, I think LSU and Clemson are some of the teams.
South Carolina is another one too, yeah.
South Carolina, yeah. So Gray might be a harder get, but I was checking 24/7 recently, and I saw that Hyder seems to be between like Tennessee and Michigan. I mean, that could be a huge get if the Vols can land him, but I'm not so sure what to think about Hyder's situation, because I know that a lot of times on Twitter he's like refuted like what reporters have like wrote about him, or like quotes that were mentioned with him being like connected to certain schools. Like, honestly, I don't know. I feel like it really is a 50-50 situation here with Hyder.
All right, so that's all we've got on recruiting for this week. Again, we will continue to monitor all those situations here in the future. But again, we don't have a ton of recruiting news left in this 2026 cycle. Maybe some 27s will pop up here. We'll see. Usually the next month or two is when they begin committing. But fun fact, or not so fun fact, depending on how you want to look at this, 4 of Tennessee's first 5 commitments in the class originally flipped. The only one that didn't was Faison Brandon. and every kid that was committed in 2024 as a member of the 2026 class, not named Faison Brandon, they all flipped. So if you are wanting to be optimistic about recruits, be optimistic about the ones later on in the cycle, I guess is the moral of the story there. Well, from the future of Tennessee football, we go to the past now, as the NFL preseason is underway officially. As of last week, as a matter of fact, you had the Hall of Fame game. Chargers defeated the Lions 34-7. Had the potential to see 3 former Vols in this game. Only saw 2 because McAllen Castles was nowhere to be found on the Chargers. But you did get to see Hendon Hooker and Jabari Small in the backfield together. Jabari Small had, 39 yards and 11 carries in that game. So got some reps along with, is it Craig Reynolds is the Lions' other running back that they had in that game? Okay, so he got some reps. And then Kyle Allen started over Hendon Hooker in this game. And, looking at what Hooker did in this game, it's kind of sad, honestly. He was 2 of 4 for, I believe, 18 yards and 1 interception. And honestly, the interception was not his fault. That's more about the DB making a great play on the ball and just ripping it out of his receiver's hands because that's where he had to put it. But kind of disappointing. I know it's preseason, so nobody cares about trying to get back into a game. But it was disappointing to see the Lions down 20-plus points with one of the coaches that takes the biggest risks in the NFL, and Dan Campbell just not want to throw the ball at all in the later stages of the game. And, I don't know if this is a knock on Josh Heupel's system or what, but I think a big part of this has to do with the ACL tear derailing him for 3 years effectively.
Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing to see him seemingly being wasted away for the Lions. Like when he got drafted, I mean, I think that was before Jared Goff really took the next step. So there was a little bit of hope there that Hendon could have gotten some playing time and everything. But I don't know, with his age and everything, I'm not sure. I'm sure he's around 27 years old right now. Has to be around that. And then the fact that he did deal with the ACL injury that he suffered at Tennessee and stuff. And then plus I think, I don't know if it was last season or the year before or whatever, they end up bringing Teddy Bridgewater back and to be the backup there. So it doesn't really seem like the Lions really have much stock into Hendon Hooker right now, which is disappointing to see considering he's one of the better quarterbacks that's played in Tennessee, or at least in recent memory. But I mean, it was nice getting to see that Jabari Small was getting some shares in the game. I mean, I'm looking at his stats right now, and he had the most carries with 11. So, I mean, he at least got some playing time in there. And of course, Hendon Hooker did too. But as you mentioned, Kyle Allen got the start ahead of him for it. I mean,
it was not very good. Let's be honest.
No, I see right now he's got 2 interceptions on there too.
Yeah, it was brutal watching that. And, I kept thinking to myself, when are they going to put Hendon Hooker in? And then, he comes in and suddenly it's just not what you thought it was going to be, which is kind of unfortunate, but, also not a huge surprise for a guy that just hasn't played much football since he exited college. So with that in mind, the NFL preseason rolls on this week. You have the official week 1 of NFL preseason. And look, I don't recommend watching the entirety of preseason football games. You'll get too bored after a while. It's just not fun. So what I've done for you guys is created a little viewing guide on how to best watch the preseason, watch the former Vols. And do want to mention something. If you see a question mark next to any of these names on here, that means they may or may not play just because they're guys that have proven themselves in years past to their organizations. So we shall see if they play. Up first on Thursday, it's the late night game. You got the Raiders at the Seahawks and Dante Thornton playing wide receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders. I have heard rave reviews about him in camp. They really, really like what he brings, his speed. Obviously, his verticality at 6'5" is a desirable quality at wide receiver. And again, this is an organization. We mentioned this right around the time of the draft, but they have Brock Bowers from Georgia, and he did really well last year for them. But you look at actual wide receivers, there aren't many of them. So this is a very good opportunity for Dante Thornton to prove himself.
Yeah, it would be nice to see him step up and possibly find himself in the starting role. Along with like some other Tennessee receivers too. Like I'm excited to see more from Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt as well. I mean, I haven't kept up with the NFL, to be honest, as much in the past couple of years, but I've been wondering why I haven't been hearing more of Jalen Hyatt's name. So I've just wondered if he's been like buried in the depth chart with the Giants or what the situation is with that. But it'd be exciting to see some of these receivers start to break out more, and maybe Tennessee can try to claim that wide receiver name again. Which,
to my knowledge, well, go ahead, Jordan.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, like Ohio State and like LSU's kind of like ran away with that as of late. But yeah.
So with Jalen Hyatt, I think it's a bit of both with what you said. The injuries potentially are part of it, and then also just being buried on the depth chart. But I did see where he's like put on a considerable amount of muscle mass here pretty recently. So that's kind of fascinating. It's not something you thought of much with him at Tennessee. He was a bit of a smaller receiver here, but known for his speed, obviously. So you'll get to see Thornton play. And then, of course, down here you've got Jalen Hyatt playing for the Giants, potentially in the preseason. I would think he's going to play a lot. Friday, of course, we mentioned the other two guys, Hendon Hooker and Jabari Small, earlier with the Hall of Fame game. James Pierce, we'll see with that one. Again, that's why I have the question mark there. Just with him being a first rounder, I would imagine he plays early in that game, but maybe not for its entirety. So that's what I've got for Lions and Falcons. Browns at Panthers. You already mentioned Cedric Tillman, Jordan, and I think we do see a little bit of him. Dylan Sampson, probably the early stages of the game, if I had to guess, just because there's not a ton of running back depth in the Browns room. And then on the Panthers side of things, Shai Tuttle's a guy that's been in the league for a while, so I doubt you see much of him. You could see some Cade Mays, though. And then finally on Friday night, you've got the Commanders at the Patriots. I would assume you're going to see a little bit of Josh Dobbs in this game. And that is your only former Vol in this one.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, like you said, he probably won't play too much, but I'm excited to see what ends up going on to Dylan Sampson, because with the Quishon Judkins news that has came out of like the past month or so, and the Browns' lack of depth at the running back position, I mean, Dylan Sampson could end up being the starting running back for the Browns this season, which would be very fascinating to watch. I mean, of course, I don't think anyone expect him to put up the same success that he did at Tennessee last season, but I mean, it could be exciting to see him, get on the field and see what he's capable of in the NFL.
Note to you, fantasy football players, and looking for an under the radar running back, go for Dylan Sampson. Maybe don't draft him in the first round. I would not advise that. But if you need to get him in like the 6th or 7th round and he's still sitting there, it's very good value for your pick. I did that with James Cook a few years ago, and it really paid off for me. So that's a good idea for you. Dallas wants to know what my 4 favorite Vols in the NFL are. Assuming this is as of right now. Can't not put Jawan Jennings on there. Have to put him on there. Going to put Trey Smith on there as well. Beyond that, it gets a little more difficult, I think.
Maybe Kamara.
Yeah, well, Alvin Kamara. That's one. Yeah, I have to put Alvin Kamara on there, although he's getting to that point in his career, unfortunately, with the magic number of 30. That kind of eliminates you from seeing the field as much as you once did once you hit that age. It's just a weird thing that's going around in the NFL right now. Who are some other ones? I'm just trying to think of the big ones here that I'm missing.
Well, Daryl Taylor was doing good a couple of years ago, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was doing all right. Would I say he's in my fourth favorite? I don't know. If he didn't play for the Bears, probably Darnell Wright. But I'm going to go with Byron Young, actually, because Byron Young has actually been doing very well for the Rams. They've been very impressed by him. So that'll be my fourth one there, Dallas, because I think there are two or three pretty obvious ones, but I think you have to do a little bit of searching for that fourth one. All right, so on to Saturday. Jordan already mentioned Jalen Hyatt, and you've got a potential to see a few more in this Giants and Bills game. D. Williams now with the Giants. You could potentially see him as a return man in this game. And then on the other side, you got Josh Palmer playing wide receiver. Honestly, I don't know how much you see him just because of the way that depth chart is looking for the Bills at wide receiver. Like, they brought him in and you lost Amari Cooper and you got a lot of young guys. So I figured you would probably see him a little bit more in a starting role. So not sure how much you'll see of him in this game. As far as this Texans-Vikings game, I have no idea with most of these guys other than Theo Jackson, because he's a guy that's been used mainly as a depth piece, although I think they did sign him to some deal in the offseason. I remember putting a piece out on it over on Vols Wire. So as far as the others, I mean, I have no clue with Derek Barnett. Daryl Taylor is part of the Texans now as well, so you could see him in this one. Jakob Johnson, of course, playing fullback. I know we didn't really talk about him when he was here at Tennessee, but that's a guy you could potentially see. Cowboys at Rams. I would pay attention to these first three. Joe Milton, obviously playing for the Cowboys. You know that's going to produce some excitement. Princeton Fant, another exciting player. We'll see how they use him in this game. Probably not very excitingly, if I had to guess, but he plays for the Cowboys. And then on the other side, we've mentioned this guy a few times just in terms of underrated players coming into training camp that have succeeded, and that is Jalen McCullough. Ended up being one of the better finds last season for the Rams as an undrafted free agent. Only one in this Titans-Bucks game is potentially Gabe Jeudy-Lally. He was on the Titans practice squad last I checked. Don't know how much you're actually going to see of him. Jets at Packers. If you consider Tyler Barron a VFL, I don't know. Most of you probably don't because he went to Miami. But he is playing for the Jets, so you will probably see a little bit of him. And I know the Chiefs drafted him last year, or he was drafted by the Chiefs last year, but Kamal Haddon is now on the Packers, so I would imagine he'll get some reps in that game as well. Chiefs at Cardinals. You got a defensive lineman on each side. You got Omar Norman-Lott playing for the Chiefs, second-round pick, so I would imagine you see him definitely in the first half, maybe just into the second half, probably not the entire game. Then, of course, you got Elijah Simmons on the Cardinals. It pains me to say it, but I had to take Broncos at 49ers off. Number one, Jawan Jennings is dealing with some injury, and like we said earlier, a guy that could potentially be your receiver one on the 49ers, so not a risk they want to take. And Marquez Callaway was signed and released within a week of joining the 49ers, so no longer have anybody to watch in that game.
Yeah, it was disappointing to hear the news about Callaway. I mean, because it would have been cool to see him like reunited again with Jennings, but yeah, it's disappointing news. But Omar Norman-Lott, I mean, I'm a little excited to see what he does for the Chiefs. You know, like the Chiefs, they've been pretty good drafting defensive players as of late. I'd like to see how good that he could be for the Chiefs because, you know, I mean, I feel like he could get playing time at some point in the season.
Yeah, I definitely think he could just because of the fact that you've got some older defensive linemen in that room and you could see him used as a depth piece, which is typically what some of those guys are that go in the second round. Sometimes they're used right away. Like, for example, I think the Titans guys that they got in the second and third rounds will be used pretty early on, even into the fourth round with some of these wide receivers that they got. So you never know how it's going to be, but I would imagine he will see the field quite a bit this year. But I would definitely think you're also going to see him in this preseason game for a good part of it. So finally on Sunday, you got the Dolphins at the Bears. 2 Dolphins to watch in this game. Of course, Jalen Wright at running back should be fun. You should be used in like a Jabari Small type role in this game. If I had to guess, I don't think he'll be the first guy out in the backfield, but I do think you're going to see him quite a bit. And then you got Matthew Butler on the defensive line, who was one of the earlier Pruitt holdovers. Earliest, I mean, as in departed just after the start of the Heupel era. I believe he was on the Raiders first and then wound up on the Dolphins. Not a name that you see floating around much in NFL starting lineups, obviously. And then Saints at Chargers. Of course, I left off Alvin Kamara because he's going to play. It's for the same reason I did with Trey Smith with the Chiefs. Like you're going to see him play a lot in the regular season. No need to use those guys in the preseason. But you've got 2 guys on the Saints in Velus Jones, who has become somewhat of a journeyman here early in his career, starting with the Bears. I forget if there was a team between the Bears and the Jaguars, but he was briefly reunited with Jerry Mack on the Jaguars. But he is now with the Saints. Hopefully he gets right in the return game because that's one area that he was very good in at Tennessee, but unfortunately has just been a liability in the NFL. And then you've got my former media law classmate here, Amari Thomas, playing defensive tackle. He was signed as an undrafted free agent, so he's fighting hard to make a cut for the Saints this year. And then, like we mentioned with the Hall of Fame game, we'll see if we see McCallan Castles. He did not play in the Hall of Fame game, so I would not get your hopes up. And another one of those guys that it's like, how do you remember him for his career at Tennessee? He was a good tight end at Tennessee, don't get me wrong, but he was only here a year, so how exactly do you measure this guy's impact? But that is your Week 1 viewing guide for NFL preseason football. Don't tune in for the entire thing. Just watch when the VFLs are on the field.
Well, I think a lot of people are going to be tuning in to see what Joe Milton ends up doing. I know, like Michigan fans tried to warn Tennessee before they ended up getting Joe Milton. Then, Joe Milton did pretty good in that Orange Bowl game, had everyone changing their mind about him, whether or not he could be successful at Tennessee. And, he didn't do terrible or anything by that. But I mean, I feel like by now we kind of know how Joe Milton is as a player. And I hope that Cowboys fans don't fall into the same trap that the Tennessee fans did. And I'm sure Michigan fans did at some point. Because I don't know. You might be seeing a lot of overthrown balls if you're a Cowboys fan. But then again, I think you mentioned before, they got good receivers too. So maybe that's the difference maker. Maybe CeeDee Lamb could be enough to go out there and actually catch those overthrown balls.
Yeah, maybe he can go deep enough and get them. But it's funny because they played him against the Bills. The Patriots did in that game that actually helped the Titans secure the number 1 overall pick. And he kind of balled out for the Patriots. I think there was this expectation in his mind that he would be potentially going up against Drake May for that job in the future, which I think is why Mike Vrabel and the Patriots front office said, let's maybe ease this guy on out to Dallas. We like what we got in Drake May. We don't want to start a quarterback competition here.
Yeah, plus a lot of times, or I feel like it's especially true in the NFL. How many times have we seen a quarterback get hurt or have to sit out a game, and then the backup comes in and absolutely tears it up. Like I think it's been a while now at this point, but I think when Matt Flynn was on the Packers and he was backing up Aaron Rodgers, I'm pretty sure Aaron Rodgers went down for one reason or the other, and I think Matt Flynn threw for like almost 500 yards or something crazy like that.
Goodness.
So I mean, yeah, something ridiculous like that. So I mean, we've seen some of this from backup quarterbacks before, but I don't know if it necessarily like proves that Joe Milton is going to be a good NFL quarterback. Like I just haven't seen enough from what he did at Tennessee or anywhere else to think that he's going to be a really successful quarterback, but he's probably a better quarterback than my Colts' quarterback. Cause I'm not too high on Anthony Richardson either, to be honest.
Well, I know you said you're not much of an NFL watcher, Jordan, but you did see today where they put the or between Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones as the starters, which is a concerning sign for Colts fans, I would have to imagine. But I seriously do wonder now, though, now that we've seen Hendon Hooker play in NFL preseason game, if maybe Joe Milton is a better fit at this juncture just because of some of the physical attributes he has. We've not seen the overthrow Joe moniker thrown around when he's played in NFL games. He's looked good in them, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes, players end up having better NFL careers than they did in college. I mean, I've seen a lot of college greats end up not doing much in the NFL either. Like one of my old favorites from my childhood, Kellen Moore, he's a head coach somewhere now, isn't he?
New Orleans, if I'm not
mistaken.
mistaken.
The Saints. Yeah, dang, that makes me feel really old. But
yeah, you want to feel old? Do you remember Kelvin Shepard, who played at LSU?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, he's the Lions defensive coordinator now.
Really? He's a defensive coordinator?
Yeah.
Not even a positions coach. Man, he must have been making some moves then in the coaching sphere.
Yeah, that it is wild to think that those guys who you and I vividly remember watching. I mean, granted, it was earlier when we started watching college football, but those guys are starting to make it up to the coaching ranks. In some case, they got kids like Dre Kirkpatrick's son, of course, at Alabama. Now that one's crazy to me, but he had to have had that kid when he was in high school, though, for him to be that age, because we're only 15 years removed from his playing career at Alabama. So that's my thought. Christian says anchor down. It's kind of funny. You should have tuned in earlier, Christian, when we had Adam Sparks on the show. Used to be the beat reporter for Vandy. Go back and check it out if you missed it. We enjoyed having him on. We enjoy always talking to you guys every single Monday night. Jordan, anything else we missed this week that is on your mind?
The only other thing I could really think of was the coaches poll being released today.
Oh, yeah.
And they had Tennessee listed at 18, which I don't feel like it's too surprising. I felt like if Tennessee was 20 or back, it would be a little questionable. But I was a little confused to see Florida directly ahead at Tennessee at number 17. Like, I know there's a lot of hype and everything, but Tennessee went to the college football playoffs last year, and I know did not have the outcome that they wanted at all against Ohio State. But it's a little interesting seeing Florida directly ahead of Tennessee, considering Tennessee beat them head to head last season, and Tennessee had a better record.
Jordan, I think those are both fair compromises in the coaches poll, just because Tennessee lost a lot on that offense. We'll call it like it is. It's what we talked about with Adam. We don't know what this offense is going to look like. And I think it's fair to put Tennessee lower in the poll right now just because of that. You don't really know what you're working with on that side. The defense will be good, but can it do enough to really, carry the team, so to speak? And you don't generally see defenses do that this day and age in college football. As for Florida, I think this is the USA Today coaches poll just saying, we believe this team can be really good. We're just not 100% sold on it yet. So I actually have no problem with either one of those rankings. I mean, if it were me, I would say Florida probably looks better than Tennessee just on paper right now because you know what you're working with at quarterback, mainly. And then also, too, you look at the fact that they've got some of their more difficult games, like Texas, and I guess you can throw Tennessee in there at home. That road schedule is no joke, though. They've got LSU, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Miami. The only one I think they should definitely win is Kentucky, and they haven't won up there since 2019. So I think those are both fair compromises.
Well, what's your thoughts about Penn State being ahead of Georgia? Because I thought that was a little surprising too.
Georgia, I'm not sold on Georgia just yet. It's the Gunnar Stockton thing for me, man. I don't know if he's all that good. We're going to have to wait to see, and we're really not going to know how good of a quarterback he is until he plays Tennessee, because they play two. I forget if it's an FCS team and then a group of 5 team. It's one of those two. 2 of those games in a row at the beginning of the season. So I'm not totally bought in on Georgia just yet. Like I know they get a lot of their more difficult games at home and whatnot, and like their toughest game, I would say Tennessee is probably their second toughest game on the schedule, just because it's an away game. Like I think they will control their home field, and I think their most losable game is probably Florida and Jacksonville, and even then, I'm not 100% confident in Florida in winning that game. But at the same time, you look at what Georgia did last season, it's like a slightly better version of what Tennessee was last season. Both had good defenses. I don't know if I'd describe them as elite. Looking at the offenses, both were a little patched up on the offensive front. Both were let down by not bad, but underwhelming quarterback play. The only major differences I can find is that Georgia won an SEC championship and had horrible injury luck at running back, which are 2 things Tennessee did not have. So I understand why there is some pumping of the brakes on Georgia, and plus 2, like, you know, with all these off-field things going on in Georgia, it's reasonable to assume that you might have a suspension or 2 in there, or you know, an expulsion from the team or whatnot. As for Penn State, I think it's the fact that Drew Allar is still there, and I need to look back and see what their situation is at running back, but they typically have a pretty good running back on that roster from year to year, and they still have both of them in Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. I know they portaled well. They got Syracuse's best receiver, which Tennessee can thank them for if Tennessee happens to shut Syracuse down in the passing game. But I think it's just the familiarity with quarterback. I'm not saying Drew Allar is some stellar quarterback by any means, but I just think the more you know about a team right now, before the season, I think the higher up they're going to be is the best way to say it.
Yeah, well, speaking about knowing like a team and everything like that, like I feel like, I mean, like, you know, yeah, Georgia might not have the most successful season by their standards this year, but like I feel like we've already came accustomed to know what Penn State's ceiling is, like pretty much ever since James Franklin's been there. I mean, they float around the top 3 of the Big Ten schools, but they don't necessarily get over the hump. So I mean, I have a hard time. I mean, I guess I don't necessarily disagree with them being at number 3, but I highly doubt that I see Penn State finish at number 3 by the end of the season.
So can you get through Oregon at home? Can you get through Ohio State in the shoe? And we'll see if this team has an encore performance, but does Indiana challenge you at home? You definitely got some tough ones on there. Other than Ohio State, the only game that really jumps out to me as being challenging on the road could potentially be Iowa, especially if that's a night game, because Kinnick Stadium is no joke, especially at night. Like there've been some upsets there recently. I know Ohio State got dismantled there back 6-7 years ago when Iowa wore those funky looking jerseys. And then I want to say Michigan was having a really good year in 2016, and then all of a sudden they just stumbled on them in early November out there in Kinnick Stadium. So that's possible, but I do think because with that Oregon game being at home, I think that's a big help. Like the Ohio State game being on the road, I think complicates things a little bit. But other than that, they should be able to manage well.
Well, I guess it's not that bad of a schedule, to be honest. I will say I think Oregon's probably still going to be a good team this year, even after losing Dylan Gabriel. I mean, I think Dan Lanning is a really good coach, and I imagine him to put up a good fight against Penn State. But yeah, Ohio State, that's going to be a tough one. Like I imagine Ohio State, they're probably going to be near the top by the end of the season again.
Yeah. Looking forward to that week 1 game between Ohio State and Texas up there in the shoe. Probably the most difficult non-conference road game all year for anybody in the SEC other than possibly LSU at Clemson, but we shall see. Well, that is going to do it for us tonight here on Tennessee Volunteers Live at the Voice of College Football Network. We appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. If you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe to Tennessee at the Voice of College Football on YouTube. It really helps us out, really helps you get closer to all of the great content that you enjoy surrounding Tennessee football. For Jordan Binkley, I am Tucker Harlan. We will talk to you guys again next week.